Oh my gosh, I am so excited to share this video with you. It is full of tips, tricks, shortcuts, re-edited, revamped, upgraded, super beautiful reveals. Wait till you see, and as always, I hope you enjoy the show. So for this project, you're going to need 2 oatmeal containers, one big one small one, or similar shape containers. You could use whatever you want. I have some basket reed there and some faux leather from the Dollar Tree and some cardboard. So I'm taking paper here just to trace the different sizes that I want so I get a straight line. That's how I ended up doing it. You can do it, however you want, but if you fold the paper in half or however tall you want it, and you put it at the bottom of the container and you kind of roll it around, that worked the best for me. You could also stick it in a bigger container that's like a bowl and do it that way too. And there are special instruments that will measure out perfect, level cuts for you on a cylinder shape like this. If you have that, that is awesome. So I'm just tracing out 2 circles of cardboard of each of those shapes. Now, I did want to say, since I made this craft, I have bought the basket reed that you can get on Amazon. And I actually think that would have worked better than the faux leather at the top there. And it's really hard to find the faux leather now at Dollar Tree. So I would look for, somebody said they sell it on a roll. And if you can come across that, I guess that would be good. But it is kind of flimsy. So I would probably opt to use the reed, or failing that, you can use a vinyl placemat or one of those vinyl cutting boards they sell at Dollar Tree and cut them in thin strips and glue it around. Now you would need to clamp it and use a strong glue, but I think that would be a good edge for the lid as well. So, because that's what we're making right here. We're actually making the lid for these little containers. And you have to measure carefully here too to make sure the circle isn't too small because you don't want it to fall through. It should sit right on the edge of your container. And then I just caked on a glue stick and that worked fine. I didn't get any bubbling, nothing, because if you watch my channel, you all know I'm a big fan of the glue stick. I think I may have ushered that in. Because I love Mod Podge. I love Mod Podge, but there is a risk of severe wrinkling. And once you get something stuck on there, you can always seal it with something really strong, right? You can go out. Well, what I usually do, because I'm paranoid about wrinkles, especially on a cylinder shape like this, I will take it outside and spray it with a clear varnish. And then once you have that thin sheet of plastic on there, it doesn't react to water. So you can glob on the Mod Podge and nothing will happen. So if you like that Mod Podge finish, which is really pretty, if you want like a glassy look, or even the matte's kind of glossy, but that, it does work. That's been my method for, going on like 15, 20 years now. So that paper right there that I'm gluing on, I found it under antique paper and it is still available on Amazon. Yes, I will have it down below in my description box. But here's what I would have done differently. You see how I just cut the paper and I cut it kind of close to the edge there and I only left a little tiny, like almost 1/8 of an inch to fold over, which I'm doing right now. See how I'm folding that over? Oh, I just noticed I'm using hot wood glue because the stick is yellow. That was really strong glue, so I meant business. But I think that would have looked nicer right there and just been easier to work with if I had cut and left 1 inch at the top and then folded that, like put little slits, and folded that over. That would have looked nicer. And even on the inside, it would look nicer. And if I had to do this craft again, I would have gone and purchased some felt, black felt probably, and lined the inside of these boxes. I think that would look so pretty. I just left them like oatmeal containers because they were for decorative purposes, on the inside. But I think I could have actually made these useful. I mean, you could still put stuff in them even if it's just cardboard. But if you want to put jewelry or little bracelets or whatever, it's kind of better if you line it. And this is why I would use the reed or something more firm like the Dollar Tree cutting mats. Even though I was so careful to apply the glue really smooth, that leather was unforgiving as far as showing every little lump and bump on the leather. I thought I applied very nice, smooth ribbons of hot glue so that I wouldn't get lumps and bumps, and it did show anyway. So I think you need a firmer, it came out really nice. But anyway, here is the imagery, and I found it on the graphicsfairy.com. I will leave the link down below. My description box is actually under hat boxes. It might even say French hat boxes, but I found the labels there and they're still there. And I just glued them on using a glue stick. And then I used this Country Tan from Apple Barrel Paint to distress the edges. Now, it's not because I like distressing so much, but distressing is a great way to camouflage the edge of paper so it doesn't look like there's paper on your craft, especially if you go and seal it with a Mod Podge to make it look like it's almost like a little ceramic decorative piece. I mean, paint is a thick liquid, and it fills in the little gaps on the edge of the paper and creates like a beveled edge so that there's a graduation from the paper layer to the next paper, and it just looks more professional. So distressing, if you do a lot of DIY crafts, is just a great way to make it come together and look more store-bought, I guess. Now here I'm taking burnt umber, and I'm going to go ahead and distress the lid specifically to cover the lumps and bumps or try to camouflage them and hide that little gap, which it did do. I mean, you couldn't see how that kind of makes it disappear. But again, just use a different edge. You actually, anybody have any more ideas for edges that are really firm? I love that metal ribbon from Dollar Tree too, but I rarely see that. Let me know and leave a comment down below. And of course, I do it to both lids and we're all done, and I loved this. For this next project, I'm grabbing these paint sticks. I buy the ones that have the straight edges. They're a little bit thinner, but I love them for crafting because I don't want to deal with losing a lot of wood with the top weird little grooves on the regular paint sticks. So I choose these. I have them linked down below in my description box if you're curious. Now for this one, I'm cutting just one of the little arches. I call those like little, I think of them like individual windows right there. So there's a little individual arch right there. And then you have to measure to make sure it fits in the frame. And then I just used one of those pieces right there. And because they're hollow behind them, like I mentioned before, they have like a little groove, they fit on top. You are literally going to stick them on top, and I'll show you that in the next coming up here. I'll show you that a little closer what I'm talking about. And then I just took my handy dandy little saw. I love this saw. It has made crafting so much easier. I get so many questions about this. This is also linked down below in my description box and also tagged in my video if you would like to look into those. They are awesome. Makes crafting very fun and very fast. So for this, I'm using wood glue, hot glue for a permanent hold, because this one I will be kind of handling more, I think. And, you know, I'm not going to be throwing it around the room or anything, but I am going to, well, you'll see. So I just want to make sure it was a permanent hold. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue these pieces together. And I recommend you leave a little extra like I did right there, just to allow for any kind of variances with your paint sticks. But I made 3 all together. That's what you need for this project. And I'm showing you now what I was talking about. See how the bottom piece is actually laying on top of the other piece? You'll see a little bit, it's actually white glue from the hot glue. It lays pretty much flush on there. You will not notice it at all because of that little groove behind the plastic pieces. It works perfect. Now we're using apple barrel paint in Golden Sunset, and we're going to give this one coat. You could use any color you want. I just thought this would be fun and do something different for my house to add a little bit of color. And I'm going to see, look at that. See how you don't see how it just looks really good. So now I'm going to take white paint and just give it all a dry brush just to tone it down a little bit, give it a little bit of character. I want these to look a little rough, I guess. Distress. I know some people love distressing, some people don't. I love distressing. I have always loved it, even before it was in fashion, like in the 1990s. I think I was distressing. Actually, I think we went through that like Italian Renaissance period where everything looked kind of Baroque in the furniture stores. You guys remember that? I don't know how many of you guys remember that, but if you guys want the back, of course, to be painted, you can. I wasn't worried about it. But if you guys like it to be painted on the back, you can do that. And I'm just taking some Dollar Tree burlap ribbon, and I'm going to glue it at the top and the bottom, just like you see me doing here. And you do have to leave a little space between these. Very important. Don't forget that part. I did on the first one, and it won't work unless you have that little space there, because you'll see this is going to be like a little screen. It's like a backdrop. Look at how beautiful that is. I just made a decorative little mini screen. this one, I used this large red vase here that came from a floral arrangement that I got, and then I just went outside and I sprayed it with this paint and primer, and we had a good base to work with, right? Because glass isn't very friendly when it comes to paint sticking and other things sticking on it. You kind of have to spray it. And if you don't want to give it color, like let's say you love whatever the ceramic color is underneath and you don't want to cover it, just get a clear varnish. Again, it's like my to-go-to. That's like my miracle stuff. Just get like a polyacrylic or clear spray, something that just is clear, and you can mist it with that, and then it creates a surface that you can put acrylic paints on and stuff that won't chip off. Another little trick there, very helpful when you're crafting. So I have these beautiful napkins right here, and I just go about tearing the edges to make it uneven. Because again, that's another way to camouflage the edge of paper or napkins or whatever and kind of make it blend more into your surface. And that's what we end up with. Now to create this cream color, I actually took antique parchment from Apple Barrel Paint and I mixed it with white acrylic paint because I didn't have a cream color in my stash, but you can actually find paints that look like this. But I was trying to create like an ivory color, I guess. I didn't want it to be snow white, just something softer. And I gave the vase one coat of paint. So this is what it looks like when it's all done. And you can kind of see I did like a cream wash, not really a whitewash, a cream wash. And this is an acrylic water-based stain that I absolutely love, but I didn't use it enough, if that makes sense. And I found that the wax, when I use antique wax, it just goes a lot farther when you add water to it. You know, it really spreads out. Like I've had one bottle that lasted me for almost 2 years, whereas the stain goes a lot faster. So to be more cost effective, I don't buy the water-based stain anymore. However, if you want to stain something, I've actually stained stairs with that brand before and it came up beautiful, and you don't want to deal with the smell and you don't want to deal with the chemicals, that's a good stain, and it comes in different colors. So that's like the benefit of using that instead of the wax, because with wax, you only have a choice really of, well, what I do is I sometimes add black to it if I want it to look more like a walnut, and that's about all you can do with it. So if you want different colors and you don't want chemicals, that's a nice stain. I don't make any commission or anything, but I just remember it was a luxurious stain and I really liked it, and it was non-toxic. Well, you can't drink it, obviously, but way healthier to work with than the other stains. So here I'm just going about trying to make this vase look older. I kind of do like a watery, washed out, I use that stain to, we can see how the vase looks kind of older and like has character now. And I'm putting it on the bottom where it would naturally get a little bit dirtier or darker from just being banged around, and just attempting to make it look older because that was a look I was going for at the time. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply the rose. So you can see I'm about ready to do it with Mod Podge. And you may ask, why did you use Mod Podge when you always talk about the glue stick? Because for this particular craft, I wanted that rose to crinkle up and wrinkle so that it would look cracked. Like I actually do more of a wash again with the dark stain, really watered down on top of it when I'm done to get it to stick in the little cracks of the napkin. So it came up perfect and I was so pleased. However, this is what I would do differently. I would definitely do little blobs of dark paint here and there all over that vase and put glue or crackle medium or something like that to make it crackle, not all over the entire vase, not everywhere, but just here and there so that it kind of would have blended in a little bit with the crackle effect of, see, I'm putting water on it to try and make it like wrinkle up and crackle. It would have blended in just a little bit better. Now this came up beautiful and it's not really noticeable. So you'll see when I show up close, it looks cohesive. It flows, if that makes sense. But this is what, if you're going to recreate something like this, and a lot of us do get flowers and get these kind of vases given to us and we don't know what to do with them, and you can find them in abundance in thrift stores, that's what I would do differently. I would make sure that that little cracked glazed look kind of is here and there on the vase. I think that would have been even better, but it does come out very beautiful. So I end up taking some carbon paper and I print up the word Paris, and I just trace it on the top, and I'm not worried about the carbon paper leaving some little stains behind. I figure that'll just add to it. It looks really good. It does actually look like an old worn off like paint when I'm all done. And I think this came up beautiful. I love this vase. It's one of my favorite DIYs that I've done. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments. So back then, Amazon wanted $21.99 for this flower pot. It's still available, but it's gone up to $28.99. And for those of you that love free DIYs and hardly spending anything, this is definitely the craft for you. This is when we were all staying inside and I had to craft showing people how they could use what they have. So I just took like literally a piece of scrap plywood that I had laying around, and you can get pieces that size for sure free at Home Depot and Lowe's. They're, I've heard they can be stingy with the bigger pieces, but little chunks like that, they throw those away. And if you ask if they have any of that free stuff, they'll give it to you. And anything for a base would work. I mean, you could also just glue a bunch of cardboard up, probably about 5 pieces or 6 pieces in that rectangle, and then put some weight on it like rocks from outside, and it would work. You just need something to glue your foam board around, because I made this craft entirely out of foam board. Wait till you see how it comes out. It's so gorgeous. You cannot tell at all that it's foam board. And I'm just gluing it with my glue gun, right? I'm just putting it all together and we're forming our little box here. So the trick here with foam board, just like cardboard, what gives it away that it's like phony is going to be the edges. So I start taking those 3 colors of paints, and you can use any kind of paint you want. It's mostly just brown, light browns, and creams that I use for this. You do have to paint the edges of the foam board. You can see how I'm clipping away any hanging paper, anything like that will give it away. But I do level it up, because when I'm done, at least in person, I remember I could tell it was foam board still. And I thought, no, that's not for me. I don't want cardboard or foam board being obvious in my home. So I take a baby wipe here, and this is actually one of those baby wipes that is full of the conditioners and lubrication type. I don't want to say chemicals, because I doubt they use strong chemicals on baby wipes because they're meant for baby skin, but those do have a glide factor. They're much more slippery, and they work really good for smearing paint and stains if you want to, buy them. The water ones work too, the ones that are like 90-something% water. Anyway, I am taking and adding a little bit of light paint in the center, because I did notice that on the actual picture that it was lighter, so that the words pop, that I couldn't make it too dark with the brown paint. So I just added a little bit of light paint and smeared it in there to give me see how I'm doing like a little halo almost all the way around the edges and leaving the center lighter. And that's prep for the words that I'm going to put in the center. Now, this was one of my earlier DIYs where I was still learning how to film, how to set up cameras. I didn't really understand, so I was still making boo-boos. I did end up putting spackling on the edge of the foam board. It's a little bit of a cheat, but it worked to cover it up just a little bit. And then I used the darker burnt umber to cover it, and look what we end up with. Now, come on, everybody. Even with the absolutely junky filming, amateur filming here, you can see that looks, in my opinion, better than the one they were selling. The one they were selling looked very cookie cutter, factory stamped, just plasticky kind of. This one actually looked like an old wooden box. I was so happy when I was done with this. I was like, wow. It was that moment of like, you don't really know if it's going to come out. And then when it did, I was so happy. So the way I retrieved those words at the time, because I did want an identical match. I believe this may have been a Look for Less contest that I participated in. One of the channels was hosting, and I can't remember which channel now, but that actually helped me get discovered. Bless their hearts. They showcase channels, and you went on a playlist and people found me that way. But I took my paper, I enlarged the item on my laptop, and then I took my paper, just a computer paper, put it on top of the actual computer screen, and just gently with a pencil traced the words. I didn't print it up. And that's how I ended up getting the words on there. And then to add the final realism, I guess, to this is I used these little carpet tacks that I got at Walmart, and I just put them in the side of the box. I just pushed it through foam board, right? 'Cause it's really foam board, it's not wood. And I just felt like it added a lot of realism. The real one, or I should say the one from the store, didn't have that, but I really liked it. And we're all done. this next one is a lot of fun. This is definitely one of the crafts. It's like, oh boy, have you come a long way, baby. Here is the inkjet that I was talking about at the time, the inkjet printer. And since then, as you guys know, if you watch my channel, I use the Mega Tank. It is an awesome printer. That printer was actually more expensive. It was almost $200, and the ink was like 60 something or 70, maybe even 80 to refill. The inkjet does 7,000 prints, and the ink, they're like bottles that you put in there, all 4 colors, all of them for 20 something. They changed the price because it comes on sale. I think it was 24 when I first checked. Sometimes it's 26, sometimes it's 28, but dirt cheap. 7,000 copies, and that's your refill price. Unbelievable. So I recommend that printer, and that is in a link down below. And for those of you that have purchased it and wrote back to me and said you love it, awesome. It is awesome. So spread the word. Don't let people get ripped off, because printers cost more or less the same. It's the ink that will bankrupt you. So spread the word. And here's what I would do differently. I just taped that down onto cardstock, that fabric, put it through that printer, and then it kind of grabbed and got ink elsewhere, which wasn't the end of the world, because at the time I wanted the distress look. But here's what I have learned since. And when I was listening to that voiceover just recently, I realized back then I was talking about looking for sticky paper, because that would be ideal, and you could probably stick it down on that. And here I am doing it. This is just sticky paper. Again, it's down below, it's for stickers. It's down below in my description box. You do have to use like a thinner muslin fabric, although I've never tried thick fabric. Maybe it would work, but just intuitively, I think you should stick with a thinner one, and like the ones they sell at Dollar Tree, that thickness. And I just stuck it on top of this paper and then trimmed it, and it automatically fits the printer. Now, when I first put it through, it didn't work, and I was like, oh no, I'll show you. There's like a line, and I was panicking, and it just turns out that the sticker paper itself is too flimsy. So all I did was tape it on some cardstock. You do need that cardstock. It just gives it that real strong, base behind it, secure, what is it? I guess structure behind. I can't think of the word, but it gives it the firmness that it needs, just enough where it went through perfectly. So, and you don't have to tape it like crazy either. As you can see, I just put 2 pieces of tape on either side, like haphazardly. It's not like a big deal. See, I just have a little bit of tape, and look at this. It comes up perfect. So here's what I did right there. I'm showing you. And there is a printable down below in my description box. And this did work, but it was kind of, there is some risk there, because the material's not really taut on the, piece that you're putting through your printer, and it can get grabbed. If you have really strong teeth that pull your paper through your printer, it can grab it and get stuck in your printer, and then you have to yank it out. So I'm showing you where it did that a little bit. You can see the ink kind of went to the sides, which again, I didn't worry about, because back then I liked that look. But if you want a clean print, get the sticker paper. And I've seen people do it with self-adhesive, like the spray adhesives, but I was always a little worried about that, because that might bleed through your fabric and actually damage the printer heads. Like after a while, they'll get a little film on it, and then they won't be clean. I'm sure you guys have heard of the setting, cleaning your printer heads. I didn't want to use my glue stick, because I know that will also leach through the fabric. This was the safest, the sticker paper is the safest, cleanest way to put it through a printer without affecting your printer heads. So I just wanted to share that. And that's what I would do differently with this DIY. So after I printed it up, I just used hot fabric glue. There is such a thing. You can use cold fabric glue. And I glued it together. And then I thought it would be pretty to add this little bit of lace on the edge there. And it was also to cover some of the ink, I think, that came on a little bit too, like a big blob. There was a big blob of ink underneath there. So, but I also liked it just for character. And that was it pretty much. And we made this super cute French country pillow. And to be thorough, in my little tricks and, my little trick bag of crafting hacks, you don't really need the fabric glue. I have glue just with regular hot glue, and put it through the washer. And as long as it's not on a super hot setting and you don't dry it, it doesn't come apart. I've never had it come apart. And even if it did, I would just touch it up, but you don't really need to spend the extra money. So I thought I'd let you know. And then I stuffed this pillow. Came up so cute. You'll have to let me know what you think. And of course, it's a great hack for anything you're going to print on fabric. This is a Pinterest find. It's my inspiration piece. It's that tray, you guys. I saw this tray. I absolutely fell in love with the colors and the energy of it. So we're going to try and recreate the energy here with another tray. This is a tray I got from the 99-cent only store for 99 cents, but the Dollar Tree certainly has plenty of trays you can use. And I took it outside. I gave it one coat of white primer by Rust-Oleum spray paint. And now I'm using Granite Gray by Apple Barrel Paint. This is a gray that I use because it almost looks like a blue gray. Now I do end up using a little bit of blue just to kick up the blue vibes a bit more when I'm working on distressing this, but we start off with the Granite Gray. Now I'm using the Dollar Tree wood pieces right there because they're going to make perfect little rustic legs for this tray. I don't have the ability to recreate the kind of legs the original tray had. And you guessed it, this is the part I would have done differently, and it was such an outstanding hack. I actually shared it a while ago, but the video did not get as many views as I was hoping for, which was a shame because this is literally like the best little hack I ever shared. It's in the top 5. The Dollar Tree sold this little cheap domino game, and the wood you could cut. Look at that. So you could custom legs, whatever you make. So that tray that I showed you in the very beginning right there with those legs, I could have made. I mean, this is a tray I ended up making in the DIY that I'm doing right now in this video. I could have duplicated. I mean, it's definitely leveling up. So it's time to share it again. And Dollar Tree may not sell this anymore, but I am positive you can find cheap little wood like this or domino sets somewhere online. And I just wanted to share it again with you. So you saw me take some black there and just go over with a dry brush. And now I'm using antique white from Apple Barrel to do another dry brush, and of course my favorite burnt umber. We're going to use a little bit of that. I'm using a combination of colors, and I just keep working with this tray and working with it and working with it until I get the look I like. I will give you a breakdown of the colors in the order that I used them. My first color, and they're all Apple Barrel paints, was Granite Gray. Second color was black. Third color was antique white. And my fourth color was burnt umber, and then I'll add a little bit of baby blue in there. You can see it right there just to kick up the blue a bit. That was not Apple Barrel, actually. That was just an old paint, but any baby blue would work, and you don't have to do that. That's optional. And now I'm just adding some black into the curves there to try and create an illusion of a bit more depth. And we're going to continue with more dry brushing, more smearing, and just more, working on this tray until we get it where we want it to be. So I'm adding some more black, and then when the surface is a little wet there from the sponge, I take advantage of that and I add the baby blue to kind of give it more of a blue haze all over it. And of course, to make up for the fact that I don't have those awesome legs on the original tray, you're going to see me use some awesome stencils. I have some beautiful stencils another lovely subscriber sent me. She said she got it from Dollar General, but someone came on and said she also saw these at the Dollar Tree, and they are perfect for French country. And it just gave it such a beautiful French country accent. But you'll have to let me know in the comments if I failed it or nailed it. I love this tray. I used some of this molding that I got at Home Depot for another project and some plywood, and I cut it. And these are the measurements I ended up with. Now, I'm using the paint sticks and I'm cutting them off just at the very top, right where they begin to curve. and that's going to be the little part that makes the washboard. I was going to use the cookie tray from the Dollar Tree, and you certainly could do that. They would make a great faux washboard look, especially because they're bumpy. I've seen washboards that actually look like that, and that would be fine. I was just in the mood for a fully wooden washboard because I already have one that has metal that is a real one. That was actually my mother's, or no, I'm sorry, her mother's, way back when. We somehow ended up with this awesome antique washboard. So I thought it would be a nice look, and in the future I might put a little shelf on the bottom to make it more functional. So you saw me take there a little bit of wood glue and hot glue, and you can see I'm not mixing the two. That's really important. If you do that, you'll deactivate the hot glue there and it won't stick. It'll cool down too quick and you'll end up with just this big blobby glue mess that isn't holding anything together. And I'm gluing everything together. Now I found for this part of the craft it was easier to go from the front like that, just like you see me doing there. I'm so glad I could film this because there's no way I would be able to explain that if I was on a radio show, I'll tell you. But when you hold it this way, you guarantee that they're straight and level, and it just gives you more control where you want that glue, and you can wipe it off in the front. You can see where it's too much, which is handy too. And I did go back and reinforce it in the back. You could see me doing that just to make sure everything stayed together. I just took hot glue and reinforced in between the seams and on the sides. And now I'm taking some primer from Kills, and I'm just going to give it one coat of white paint. Now this is a water-based primer. I didn't get the other one, and I bought a gallon of it for one project. I think it was a furniture project, and I just have so much left. And you guys, it dries looking like chalk paint, you know, because its primer is really dry. I like that it's kind of transparent too, because it gives a very rustic, distressed look kind of naturally. It's not a real solid white, so it's perfect for craft projects. And I'm using it up, and I find it's really handy too when you want to put the cheaper acrylic paints on, because it gives a surface for those to stick on really nicely. So that works out well too. And here I'm taking a little bit of spackling and just filling that crack in. It was driving me nuts. I could have left it again. That would have made it look more rustic. I just felt it looked a little bit more finished. Oops, there's a little dry piece of spackling there. I just felt it looked more finished with that crack filled in. Now here's the printout that I created for this, and I was going to get it all ready to Mod Podge down, and I certainly don't mind Mod Podging. I did it with the first DIY. Sometimes it looks really good and it's totally appropriate, but for this, because I had gone to the trouble to cut all the wood and sand the wood, I thought, Holly, no, just take a few extra minutes. I think it took me 10 extra minutes to put some carbon paper down. The kind of carbon paper I use is also down below in the description box, and it gives it the look of an authentic ink stamp, and my antique washboard actually has that. It has an ink stamp of the company, and that's what makes it look so awesome. So I just wanted to put it up a notch there for awesomeness. If you have a Cricut, use it, because there's tricks you can do to make that look antiqued as well. You can do reverse stencils, you can paint over the vinyl and dry brush it, but why not go for the real deal if you can? I love this. So I decided to use the black colored pencil from my Prismacolor pencils just to color in those words. I was going to leave them, but I thought they looked better colored in. And again, I'm using the color Pavement by Apple Barrel to do the distressing on this because it is white. I didn't want to go in with black. I thought it might be a little too harsh. You can go in with black, but just go really light. Use your fingers or a sponge to spread it and make it softer. But I'm just doing the little distressing and antiquing. But I think this came out absolutely gorgeous. I love this. I love every craft in this video today, you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. I love to hear from you. But we're all done. going to need this super cute Dollar Tree mirror or a mirror like it, and I'm trying to show you the designs here. It has absolutely beautiful designs, and when I saw it at the Dollar Tree, I snatched it up. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. And you're going to need some scrap material that's see-through and sheer. I'm showing you here how it's sheer. I'm using an old runner that I have laying around and some Dollar Tree lace ribbon, but you can make, mix and match this any way you want, because in the end it's yours, so make it your own. But I'm just going to give you the general idea of what I did here, because we're going to make a French country decor piece. So the first thing I did was paint it with some primer. It was the Kills primer, K-I-L-Z, and definitely do that, because I tested it and painted a little bit of acrylic paint at the bottom and it started peeling off right away, and I thought, we're not doing that. So we did the primer first. You can take it out and spray paint it with primer too. It was just raining that day, so I had to stay in. And then I took some pewter gray. I did a dry brush over it to kind of darken it up. And then you saw me take a little burnt umber there just to add some shadow, and I wiped it away, but it still changed the color a little bit, so it wasn't totally the pewter gray. And then the last thing I did, which I really loved, was I took a white sponge with paint and just tapped it lightly on top of those designs to deliberately bring them out. And this is what we end up with here. We've got the shadows underneath and the whiteness on top, and I love the way that this came out. So the next step, of course, is cutting that material. We're going to cut it. Well, I'm saving the little trim for another DIY, so that's a separate issue for me. But just cut your material in strips. You're going to do long, even strips, and don't be concerned if they're jagged on the side or crooked. The more, the more imperfect they are, the more perfect they will look for this particular DIY. So that's all I'm doing now, is just cutting this material into strips. So you definitely want this craft to have an uneven bottom with different lengths. So I'm grabbing each one of these now and just, I'm going to grab it like a bouquet, I guess, and make sure the top of it is even. If it's not perfect, you'll see me trim it a little bit later in the video, but more or less you try to get it even. Then you're going to take that Dollar Tree lace ribbon, tie it on that handle really tight into a knot, and kind of flare out the top the best you can a little bit. Don't make it so it's really small and skinny. I don't know if that translated correctly, but you can see me kind of fanning it out so that it looks like a fan, and when you tie it really tight, it will almost turn into like a little flower bloom. It looks really cute. You can see it right there. And then I made a really pretty bow with a Dollar Tree ribbon. That was just a floral bow. I've got some videos on that. If you're interested in learning how to make those, there's a lot of wonderful YouTube videos on that. I know other channels show you in detail how to make floral bows. They're very simple. You just loop it around your hand and tie it in the middle. And of course, the French country look is a very romantic look. So I'm taking these pearls, also from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to glue 3 of them in the middle of this bow. And last but certainly not least, I added some delicate baby's breath type flowers to this and some greenery, and it gave it that perfect finishing touch, and I absolutely love the way that this came out. Grab a Dollar Tree shadow box. I'm using some of their stick-on wallpaper, and I'm finishing off the back of these, but you can leave them plain or put whatever you'd like inside the back. I'm using one of the Dollar Tree wooden bases here, and I'm giving it a light dry brush with white paint, giving it a quick dry, and I actually end up using the back of the shadow box for this craft, and I'm painting that as well with dry brushing. It's not totally dry brushing, but it's just not perfect white paint. I'm using these seed starter pots from Dollar Tree. I love them because they're nice and light, and they look heavy. They kind of look like concrete or cement because they have a rough texture. And I'm just dry brushing this with a bit of antique parchment from Apple Barrel, and I'm making a bow out of some twine and lace, some ribbon from the Dollar Tree. This is all Dollar Tree ribbon. And the neat thing about those little seed pots is you can cut them. They are super easy, and I'm just gonna cut mine in half like this. I'm going to take some hot glue and glue it onto the back of the shadow box. Once I glued it, I just kind of pressed it into the shape that I wanted while the glue was drying, and then I filled it with some Spanish moss, lavender from Walmart, and I glued that bow on the front of it. And in person, I don't know if you can tell, but it was too white. So I decided to take some gray paint and just add a little bit of dimension and dry brushing in some areas here and there. And then I took a wet tissue and kind of smeared that around. It gave it a very beautiful effect. And this created a very versatile and beautiful decor piece, but let me know what you guys think. I love keeping these extra thick rolls from my heavyweight foil. They are great for DIYs. Like, they are super, super strong. I'm showing a utility knife here, but I end up cutting it with a saw because it was just too thick. There's the approximate measurement for those of you that would like to see that in case you want to recreate this. These are a little bit thinner than the standard paper towel rolls, so just keep that in mind. Paper towel rolls are too thick and they're not strong enough either. You need that center roll from the heavyweight foil. I have 3 of these Dollar Tree wooden boxes, and I'm just going to go ahead and give them a coat of white paint. Now I'm taking the Dollar Tree large craft sticks. I'm just cutting off the very tip where it starts to curve so it's nice and straight. It's because, of course, I don't want to just have cardboard there. Even if you paint it, you can kind of see that line on it. So I'm going to cover these with some craft sticks. If you're really good at painting and dry brushing and disguising stuff, you could paint it. You could also watch my video on DIY birchwood and use that method and make them look like birchwood in the center. That would be really pretty too. But for this DIY, I decided to cover them with craft sticks. I'm going to go ahead and paint the craft sticks with a coat of white chalk paint as well. These are some silicone molds I got from Amazon. They are great for making these little decor pieces and accents, but in order to have a successful outcome with the hot glue, you really do need to push the tip of your hot glue down into those tiny little crevices, those little small ones. Just stretch the silicone out, press your glue gun down and squirt. You can also put them in an oven and heat them up that way till the glue's melted if you want to make sure it gets into all the crevices. But either way, when you pull them out, you are going to have some cleanup work, and it's easily handled with some sharp scissors. And well, I used cuticle clippers, sharp scissors, and the glue gun to remelt off little areas where, like, the clippers couldn't reach inside a circle area where there was a thin membrane of hot glue. I would push my glue gun through that area, and it really quick because it's super thin. In fact, you don't even have to touch it. Sometimes you just hold it close and it melts, and you move really quick so that you don't change the shape. But that's how you go about cleaning this up, and they come up absolutely beautiful when you're all done. I'm using the color Elephant Gray from Apple Barrel Paint, and I'm just dry brushing it around the edges and leaving the center white so it creates that nice cloudy look. I'm also leaving the middle of these wood because I love that they're real wood, and I love that that shows. And of course, I go ahead and do some dry brushing on the center pieces as well. I'm going to use this metallic paint by Folk Art in sterling silver to paint my little molds. and then I gave them a quick blow dry so that I could glue them on the front of my boxes. I am using a hot wood glue by Surebonder. It's down below in my description box, but I have to say that because this is cardboard to wood, it's like wood to wood, it stuck super hard, like you cannot move these. So make sure if you're making adjustments with the trays, you're doing it while your hot glue is still wet and liquidy, because once it sets up, you're not going to be able to change it. So you can see here how I'm turning it, and I recommend you do the same thing because I had to make quick adjustments. You can see right there, just to make sure it's even from all four sides. For the top box, I decided to do it a little bit differently. I decided to glue it first down in the middle, that way I was sure it was in the middle, and then glue that to the second box so that I could make the adjustments in the front, back, and sides, and it worked out really, really good that way. It came up perfectly even for all three trays. This is what it looks like when it's all together, and it is very sturdy. I just want to let you guys know that. You can store heavy stuff in this. It does not move, and it's pretty heavy too. My daughter's using it on her vanity for her makeup. I'm taking some white paint and just dry brushing the front of those little molds to make them look frosty, and then just tapping some of the Folk Art metallic paint in copper on the front, and that's it. This came up absolutely stunning. She loves it. I love it. Highly recommended craft. I hope the camera does it justice. I took this container right here and gave it a coat of my homemade white chalk paint. The video link is down below in my description box if you're interested. And I didn't use 2 coats. I didn't need to. I just kind of put it on extra thick, or it was going on extra thick. You can see it right there in the camera. It was covering everything fine. So I just did 1 coat, and I went ahead and painted the whole thing, including the lid. Once everything was dry, I took the antiquing wax and I decided to go ahead and make the lid look like a faux wood. Now, as I'm giving it all its little accents and everything, it's actually bringing out that word enfamil even more, and I thought, oh no, that's not gonna do. So we're going to take care of that in a minute, you'll see. But for now, I'm just gonna concentrate on the side of the lid and the edge of the lid. I didn't realize I actually left that in the video. That's that moment when I looked at it and went, oh no, that won't do. So I grabbed the lightweight spackling from the Dollar Tree. I actually add quite a bit of paint to this spackling to make it perform more like a creamy spackling, because it's a little too dry and crumbly for me. You can do that. I mean, there's quite a bit. I would say I add probably anywhere from a 1/4 to 1/3 cup of paint in there, and it makes it go longer as well. You get almost 1.5 to double the amount of spackling, so that's a nice little money saving tip. And I wasn't sure it was going to work on this lids, but I went ahead and I covered the center, and I'm just taking some water and a brush and smoothing it all out. But the lid didn't really have much bend to it. It's a pretty strong, solid lid. In fact, if you guys ever come across these baby containers from either friends, neighbors, or you just are in the grocery store, squeeze one or feel one. They are so strong. And I was pretty sure that the spackling would withstand the movement of somebody opening and closing the lid without cracking. So I went ahead and did the elephant gray and apple barrel paint, did a little dry brushing on the outside and the top of the lid, and now I'm taking, this is a mold that I made with some silicone molds. I've shown it in previous videos. I just squirt hot glue in there, and then it comes out. I just, trim off the little pieces that were hanging over the edges with my cuticle clipper from the Dollar Tree, and then we have these cute faux, like, I don't know, metal. I think they're normally supposed to be metal, but they're super cute for like a French country look if you're into that. They're just perfect for that, and it's super dirt cheap to make them with hot glue instead of the clay, and very, very easy to do. You can even put them in your oven, because the ones I bought, which are down below in the description box, are meant to go in the oven like with heat, because they're 100% silicone. That's as far as I double check that when you order it, but that's what I understood when I ordered it. So I went ahead and did a little bit of the antique wax around the edge just to give it a little bit more character. And then I like to take a little bit of white paint and bring out the design, and then just tap it with some of that iridescent fluorescent metallic paint that is in copper, and make it look like there's a little bit of metal peeking out. And then I take a little bit more of the gray and a little bit more of the antiquing wax. I go around the edge, and here's what I was talking about. There's the cuticle clippers. Once you paint it, you can kind of see the strings that you missed, so just clip them off, no big deal. But we're all done and going on 2 weeks now of use, and the spackling is still holding strong. And this one was such a cute, fun craft, and I wanted to use some spare wood, but I'm showing you that the Dollar Tree square sign would have worked just fine too. In fact, I think if I had to do it again, I would just stick with the Dollar Tree sign, because what ended up happening, and I talk about it later in the video, not this video, but that craft video, is that the knots from the wood showed through and made it a little bit tiny lumpy in one area when I glued the paper down, so I could have avoided that by just using the backside of a Dollar Tree sign. So if you do this craft, I recommend you do that. The paper is from Hobby Lobby, nice and thick and beautiful. I went ahead and printed up a little French lady, and the link will be down below in my description box. And then I printed up the word Bonjour, and I just use pencil, and I'm really careful to keep the pencil exactly on the letters. For this craft, it's critical. No carbon paper, nothing like that. If you have a Cricut, of course, you can cut this out, but I try not to use my Cricut because I know not all of you have it. So I don't want to leave you out, and I want to show you that you can do it without the Cricut. So by keeping the pencil exactly on the letters, you don't risk getting, and I'm showing you up close, staining, I guess, from extra lead, pencil marks or carbon paper onto the craft paper, because that's unforgiving. You can't paint over it. You can't erase it. So it was really critical that I keep it clean, and it worked beautifully. Here's what I would do different with this little lady. Today, I would print her up on sticker paper, and that would avoid the little, see how I have to touch up the little edges there with my marker? You can still print her up on paper if you want, touch up the edges, but it would be easier and cleaner to print her up on sticker paper. Sticker paper is kind of vinyl. It is like vinyl. You put it through a printer and you have to manually cut it out. You don't have a cutting machine, but you get that clean edge that you don't have to worry about touching up. And it's already sticky and ready to go. So that's what I would have changed. And here's the other thing I would have changed. I went really heavy-handed with the Mod Podge, and it worked out okay because the paper was really thick, and I mentioned that in the original sound, the original voiceover. But I not that I didn't discover the glue stick, because I used to use it years ago, but I think everyone was using Mod Podge at the time, so I kind of thought, oh, well, that must be what it is, so therefore I will. And then I went, what are you doing? Back up. Use the glue stick. So better way to do it, obviously. And I take painter sticks, and I've shown this before on my channel. This is the first time I actually did it on my channel. I took the painter sticks, and the painter sticks I use don't have that little weird edge on the, I cut them off, so then you end up with a super short painter stick, and you end up with a really small craft. So these are actually like 12 inches, I think, or maybe 13, and you get a little bit more bang for your buck. The link is down below my description if I didn't mention that. And I just prefer these. They're a little thinner, but it's a trade-off. But I just haphazardly put glue on these to create texture, and you really don't have to be perfect. That's why I filmed it, to show you. You can be sloppy with this, and it still comes up so cute and so French. look at that. And it makes a great frame for this little lady. So then I just glue the frame on and we're done. And I think she came up so cute. She's kind of like a total accent piece. Like if you were trying to decorate French country and you didn't feel like people were understanding that when they came into your home, when you put things like this up, they get the message. I saw this super cute craft from Wayfair, but look at that price. So here's a free printable I created to try and catch the energy of that. And I'm using a coffee can. Someone called me the queen of coffee cans on Instagram. Thank you for that. So I took this can outside and I gave it a coat of primer. And the colors that I wanted to use are the cheaper acrylic paints from Apple Barrel, and I knew they weren't going to adhere. So I went ahead and used a primer and paint Rust-Oleum mix there so that the acrylic would have something to grab onto, and it worked out really well. I'm going for this color here for my first base color, and I've also talked about this in previous videos. If you want a look, a certain color, you'll often find that it's a blend of many different colors to get that final result. It's never just one color. And it's like your hair. Your hair has many different colors in it, but you'll look at it and go, oh, someone's brown or brunette or blonde or red. There's actually a lot of colors going on in there to create that one color, and paint's no different. So I always start usually with a minimum of 3 different paints to get one look. So here I did that color blue, and then I used the purple. You can see it on the palette right next to it there. Add a little bit of the pavement color by Apple Barrel because I do want to get those undertones that make it look a little antiqued, but I don't want to get carried away on the distressing. And then I want to get a little bit lighter because this is a spring craft. So I'm using a violet color. Any violet color will do just for the final. And that one, you know, my brush is a little damp, so it kind of gives it that cloudy look, which I really like. And then it shows all the other colors through it. So the next step is I'm cutting this. I don't want to tear it. I don't want to even antique around the edges of this label. I really want it to be clean like the craft we saw in the picture. And I'm going to use Mod Podge, of course. I got a little carried away with the Mod Podge. It's okay. I ended up doing the entire container right there and then putting the label on because I got a little carried away. That's all right. I'm using a sponge here. It's a little bit wetter than damp to press down, and I'm pressing really hard. I'm not just, dabbing it. I'm really pressing down. And that, for me anyway, works brilliantly to get the wrinkles out and to get the paper down in the grooves so that it looks like it's one unit, not paper on top of the metal can, which would make it look kind of cheap. So now I'm just picking out of my florals some lavender here, and I don't know, thank goodness I had the fortitude. I don't know what made me do it. I've never done it before, but I thought I should film with a second camera to the side just in case something happens one day. Well, I lost the footage where I kind of wound up a pool noodle there and used it for foam, but we got a side view here. It's beautiful. Let me know what you guys think, but I love this. This craft, I had some of those styrofoam fillings that came with some rice powder I had ordered, and I thought, that would be really neat for a craft. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I thought I had this leftover heart frame, and I ended up taking this styrofoam and gluing it all over this wreath. I have never worked with this foam before crafting, so I did not know what to expect. I have painted on foam before, but this foam was almost a little shiny and more absorbent. So I took my wax and practiced on the back of it, thinking I could make it look like faux wood and give it some grain, and it just wasn't doing it. So I take Territorial Beige here from Apple Barrel Paint and I cover the whole thing, and this is what we end up with. And I take the wax and I do tap it on there to give it some dimension. It reminds me of a seaside village I went to. It was a resort, and there was this man there taking old driftwood. He had like a little mini drill, like what you use for acrylic nails, that barrel shape, and he was drilling top designs and grooves into the wood and making wreaths out of it in different shapes. He had circles, hearts. He would also do animals, and he did everything. But I thought, wow, it kind of looked like what he did, but I just felt it was a little too dark. I wasn't getting quite the look I wanted. I was looking at it thinking, this almost looks like, I don't know, brick? Anyway, so I ended up flocking it with a bit of white, and I was happy with that. That was matching more the theme of my decor for this year's Valentine's Day. And of course, it can be kept up all year round, you guys. I do keep these wreaths up all year round, and I have a perfect metal huge frame on my wall that's very heavy looking, and because the heart is heavy looking, I realized it's going to be staged really beautifully there all year. So I'm taking some of my scrap material. I took a razor blade. I'm scraping it along the edge. That's how I frame my material. And I love the Dollar Tree mop, you guys. I have loved it for a long time now. I would love to hear back from you guys what you think this looks like. I mean, I guess if I had purchased those wreaths from the guy at the seaside resort there, I would have had something very similar to this on my wall. It would have been a great conversational piece, that's for sure. But I think because it was so lightweight, but it looked heavy like stone or brick, it threw me. I told my husband I cannot wait to hear what all my YouTube friends had to say. For this craft, you're going to need a picture frame of your choice. You can get one at the Dollar Tree. Some wooden beads or some Dollar Tree beads. This printable. And I'm using this paper that I got from Amazon. The link is also down below, and the link for that printable will also be down below. So here's the foam board I cut out. I'm just now painting it a cream color, and that is a color I made there with the apple barrel, and I'm about to say antique white. It was antique parchment. I put about 1 inch in that bottle. It's a salad dressing bottle, and filled the rest up with white paint, and it made a perfect cream color. Now I'm going to take 4 of those little wooden beads there, set them aside, and I'm using the Dollar Tree glue stick, which I'm really pleased with as well, because you have zero wrinkling with it, and it really holds everything down beautifully. And this is going to be inside with glass on top anyway, so it's going to be held down. So I'm gluing these little legs on. I chose to leave them wood because of the darker paper that I chose. I thought it added a nice little tie-in for the look, and that's it. It is that simple. Okay, big fan of the pocket can crafts here. Yes, oh my gosh. Now I've seen these where people actually take cans, where the whole thing is metal, and you have to beat the heck out of them with a mallet, and it's really hard and involved, and Why? Because by the time you decorate them, you're not really going to see that they're metal. So I discovered if I just took cans that were made out of like this cardboard with the foil covering, you could just manually cover them, or I'm sorry, manually squish them down yourself with hands. You could see it was really simple. And then I made this print here. Isn't that French? Like, I love that little bird one. It's so pretty. Now I did print this up on tissue paper, but here's what I would do different. I would just use sticker paper for this because I am cutting clean edges there. So you're not going to need for it to be so perfectly graduated into the surface of your craft. You know what I mean? Tissue paper, for those of you that don't know, it's just gift tissue paper. And I tape it on cardstock and put it through my printer. And the whole idea is that you can put it on your craft and it kind of disappears like it's a print. So for certain surfaces, it's still ideal. But for this particular craft, I could have just used sticker paper. It would have worked just as well, but I didn't think of it back then. And then I'm putting little holes on the side because we're going to want to hang this baby up. You can use anything to poke the holes in. And I glued it with a glue stick. Now, definitely, you have to, with a tissue paper, use a glue stick. It is so sensitive to moisture. You don't have a chance with Mod Podge. You will smear the ink. You will wrinkle the paper. It will be a nightmare. So stick with a glue stick, driest glue possible. I mean, if you had to use Mod Podge, put it on so thin that you're almost wiping it off. Like if you don't have a glue stick, you have to make it as dry as possible because the tissue paper is very reactive. And then I just take this really pretty trim. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and I just go about decorating this little pocket can. I just put a trim of lace on it. And as you saw, I mentioned, I poked the holes, and of course you have to be careful not to cover the holes. So don't put them too high, especially if you're planning on putting trims. And that's why I did it first, by the way. Just in case you guys make these, you don't want to do it afterwards, because if you have a trim there, it'll be in the way. So you want to do it first so you know where your holes are and you can work around it. And I'm using raffia. Now at that time, I had this raffia that I found on Amazon that came in really pretty colors. This was one of them. It was like a dark pine green. And I thought this was so pretty for like a garden piece here, or this is something I would hang in a window. I love this. And I just braided it. I took 2 strands of each, or maybe it was 3. Yeah, it's 3. And then I just braid all the way down, and I make handles for this. And I tie them on. And because the raffia is a little bit thick and it resists bending, it's like a different kind of raffia. I think it's not real raffia. I think it's more like a plastic. It didn't really want to bend and lay flat, so I did have to forcefully push it down and glue it down with hot glue. But that's what I end up using for my handles. Then you just stuff the inside with some Spanish moss, and that, in my opinion, gives a strong enough hold if it's for an indoor decor piece. If you're putting it outside, you might want to glue some foam down there and like cram your florals down into the foam, but mine was for indoors, so the Spanish moss does a good job of holding it. And I'm just using some boxwood and roses to fill this up to keep it very French looking, and this would even pass for English country as well. And when I say that, I'm talking about like the traditional classic vintage, when you think about what this decor looks like, not the modern stuff, but yeah, the home cozy little traditional look that you expect. And then this ribbon here was from Hobby Lobby. The stripes were perfect for the French look, and I just made a pretty bow and I glued it on the side of this piece, and that was it. We were all done, and I think this came up so pretty, and it does come in as a free craft. If you use dried flowers from outside and some leftover like fabric that you have and you cut it in strips and use that for a bow, this can be a free craft. And a huge loving shout out to those of you that remember this craft. This was one of my first ones that helped me get discovered here on YouTube. It's still a beauty though, and I bet most of you haven't seen it, and it was a great craft. So I was doing the look for less again, and I had to copy these sconces, and I just printed up the actual sconce. And if I had to do it again, here's what I would do differently. I would print it up and keep it on one sheet of paper so there's no seams, because in the end these are kind of really big for the wall, and I think they would have looked cuter at the time as like little shorter, squattier wooden sconces, I guess, because at that time, like right there, you see how it's cut in half at the top there? Actually, the top pieces that you see right there, that size, I think, maybe a little longer, would have been the cutest look for this because that was kind of trending at that time. We didn't have like the cone bottom. We had like sconces and filler things and little tin boxes and stuff that went on either side of mirrors or a fireplace mantle that had more the bottom that was that wide. So to make these cute little guys, you do have to print them up twice because you're going to need to make the front and the back and then make it 3D, right? So I used too much Mod Podge, yes I did, to glue this. And again, this is in the day before I was like brave enough to come out with my glue stick. I was just doing the Mod Podge thing, and I glued it on poster board because I knew I was going to need to bend this into a curve, right? And then the back of it was foam board, and I just cut it out on black foam board, and then I glued the top of the paper onto the back of the foam board. So you'll see, I don't know if it shows in this video, but the words were actually on inside of the sconce. There were some words, and you're not going to see it because you fill it with flowers, but it's because I had to print up 2 copies. So here's what I would do differently besides making them just smaller and putting them on one piece. Even back then, I should have used the glue stick. That would have made things easier. I would print it up on the sticker paper for sure. This would have been an easy one with sticker paper. And it was a really clever actual DIY because what I end up doing after I curl it around and glue the sides to the foam board is I do take these 2 colors that I felt matched the paper enough, and I just did kind of a light paint over all of the paper to take the shine away, which I would still do with sticker paper, only the difference is the sticker paper, as I've learned years later, it doesn't wrinkle because it is vinyl. So you don't have to worry about all of like the buckling and stuff, and you can take away the shine. So it's kind of like a dry brush of paint where you're rubbing it on and rubbing it off, rubbing it on. And I just would have used those colors, and I was doing that, one, to take away the shine, and the seam where I had to cut the paper in half, I was trying to camouflage that as well. So after I was done doing that, some of the wording disappeared, and I just took this gray marker and touched it up, which was no big deal. And then I just decided to go over all of the letters on the entire craft just to make sure they pop and, stand out. So here's where I take my poster board and I start rolling it around, just the inside of like one of those thick cardboard rolls that you get from Foil. They make great little rollers there, and you can get them dirty. You don't have to worry about stuff sticking to them because they're disposable. And I start making the inside of the sconce. Now, I do glue craft sticks on the back to stop things from warping, because once you start painting and gluing, as you know, foam board starts to curl and warp just like cardboard does. So you can see I'm putting a lot of support. At the bottom there, I have extra foam board glued on the front on the inside and 2 craft sticks glued on the back, and just anything that I needed to do. So I focused on the inside more because I wanted it to lay flush against my wall. And if you put too many bulky things in the back, it's going to ruin that. So I'm just gluing it on the side. And then when I'm all done, I realize, oh my gosh, this is really thin. This looks terrible. It's not going to pass for wood because it's thin, right? The foam board in the back is thick, but the front is poster board, and you'll see what I do. I take a strip of foam board, and you can curl foam board. You will hear it kind of popping and cracking as the foam breaks, but you can make it pliable, just like cardboard. And I needed it to be foam board because I had already applied some spackling on the top backside right there, and so I needed it to match. So I just put a strip of the foam board, as you can see, right at the top to create the illusion that we now have a thick front as well as a thick back. And I apply more spackling. Spackling is my friend. I love spackling. I don't know if people were using it that much back then. And now people have gotten so creative with it. You can do so many things with it. It's like pliable, and you can make faux cement. If you've been watching my channel, you know I've done a lot with it, but it's because I used to have to work with it a lot back in the day when I couldn't afford to buy things and I wanted it. It was a great hack. So here I just go about painting it to make it match. I'm just bringing everything together here, and you're going to see the final results. And I think it came up really beautiful. Now, the trick here comes up with the Mod Podge. Mod Podge, if you water it down, will kind of start to run off of your paper and create rivets. And at the time I wanted this, it was still in person, it was looking too much like paper, and that was concerning me. So I thought I'm going to use that trick with the Mod Podge where you just water it down, and then when you paint, it rivets and it makes little grooves. You'll see it here. See how it starts to like See when I'm painting how you can see it sliding off? It wants to go off. So I'm blow drying. So you paint it really quick, and you do have to have a blow dryer while you're doing this because it wants to slide right off of your project, I guess. But you need it to be watered down so that you get these natural looking rivets that look a lot like wood grain when it dries. I don't know any other way to say it. It was there, right there. See how it kind of separates? It just looks really natural, like wood that's old. You know, if you see like weathered wood outside, any kind of, especially if it's professional lumber and it's been outside for a while, you know how it kind of splits in different places unevenly. If you use regular Mod Podge, because someone's going to say, what's the difference? You get more even lines and it looks more artificial. If you water it down, you get those uneven, weird, zigzaggy thingies and like wide openings, small openings, and it looks more like what natural wood does when it's getting old and kind of splitting apart. So that's why I watered it down. But like I said, you do have to blow dry as you go, and there you go. See how it looks like wood? These did come up looking like wood, you're going to see. And here's the originals that I'm copying, and there are mine on the left-hand side. I don't think I did too shabby, you guys, and this is the final result. Going to need some lace doilies from the Dollar Tree, some embellishment of your choosing, some cloth or ribbon of your choosing, and now we're going to take 2 of the doilies and glue them together. Now I did this because they were a little bit thin and I was worried about them tearing. You don't have to do this if you're short on them, but you'd have to be super, super careful. So I'm taking some polyfiber fill and I'm just putting a little tiny thin amount in the middle there, and now I'm going to glue those doilies together. Now remember, they're double-sided, so they're extra thick, and that's it. You're just gluing it around, and you're being really gentle so that you don't crease any of the paper here. You definitely want to try and keep it smooth. Now this is some cloth that I have used in previous videos to make pillows. I have used it to stuff little garland for little pumpkins and little jack-o'-lanterns. So it was the top of a king-size bed skirt. You know, the top part, I cut off the ruffle and just took the top part because it looks very much like a drop cloth, and it also shreds and frays really easy. And now I'm taking some of the Dollar Tree mop yarn. These pull apart in 4 different strands. I love mops, you guys. I think they are so naturally primitive, but it blends perfectly if you have a rustic decor. And I'm just making a really pretty bow with this. First thing I do is tie the Dollar Tree lace ribbon together with those mop threads, and then I put the frayed cloth bow on top of it, and it just makes an absolutely beautiful embellishment. And what you see me doing here now is taking 2 of the mop threads. Now you don't tear these apart, they are left intact and full, and I'm making a top knot at the top because we're going to be gluing these hearts, kind of angling them at different angles a little bit down these threads here, and that will be what holds them as a cascading, beautiful hanging wall piece. You know, I'm going to end up putting these on one of my old windows. I snagged up a picture at the thrift store for about $5. It was perfect to convert into a window, and I went and bought some thin pieces of wood at Lowe's and glued them on and made a faux old white window that I love that look. And this is going to be a perfect decor piece hanging down that window. Check out how beautiful these came out. Now I put this one in there because it has a great print for French country decor. I found these really cheap on sale, or they were on clearance actually at Hobby Lobby. I bought a bunch of signs that year, and look at this print. It's beautiful. I mean, that is like the French countryside. So I thought, we're going to add this. This is so nice. And I did print it up on the tissue paper. What would I do different today? To be honest with you, nothing. I would keep it on the tissue paper because it did not cover the full sign, and putting it on really thin. Remember, I spoke about that earlier in the video. When you put it on, when you're using tissue paper, the idea is you kind of want it to be like a print almost, where you can't see the beginning of the paper or the end of the paper. So this was the most ideal application method. If I had to use the sticker paper, it would have been like a big blob of vinyl on there, and it would have been harder for me to hide. And as it turns out, after I do dry brushing and different distressing and stuff like that, you can see how it just blends right in. So that was beautiful. Are some scoops from baby formula that I saved. I'm going to go ahead and cut the little handle off using some wire cutters. I get it as flat as I can, and then I use some cuticle cutters. Those are a great tool for crafting, by the way, when you need to get into tiny areas. Some little cuticle clippers. I cut down more, and then I take the sanding block from the Dollar Tree and sand it completely flat, and you literally cannot tell there was ever a handle there. And then I choose to go around and kind of sand the entire thing, because we are going to be painting these, and I want the surface to, the paint to adhere to the surface. So we're roughing it up a little bit, and we're giving it a coat of my chalk paint. That's my homemade one in the jar right now. So I got these off of Amazon. There'll be a link down below. They're only like $10, and they're absolutely fabulous. They're 100% silicone molds, and I think they're meant for air dry clay. I'm being like super thrifty, and I'm gonna go for it with hot glue. There we have it right there, a beautiful mold. Now, I'm one of those crafters. I changed my mind a lot, and I encourage you all to do this, because that's part of the fun of creating, is to be able to change your mind. But I end up going with this mold instead, because I decide that longer one isn't going to look good for what I need, and I make a total of 4. And you also saw me use those cuticle clippers to clean up the edges. They're a great tool for that. Now, this is a sign I found at Ross. Again, we're looking to beat the Dollar Tree now, because they're raising their prices, and I think you can do better elsewhere. So that was 99 cents. Here's a free printable that's going to be off of a blog that I'll leave the link for down below. I want it big so that it covers my full tray, and I go ahead and I do it on the tissue paper, that simple gift tissue paper that I tape to cardstock and put it through my printer. So as you can see, I'm using my glue stick. I'm taking my time, because we're matching all the seams up, and you'll see in a minute how you can't even see the seams with tissue paper. It's absolutely fantastic. If you take your time and you don't overlap, you literally, it looks like it just looks like one print. So here are some little wooden dowels. These are actually the handles off of the sponges that I use from the Dollar Tree to paint with. When I throw those away, I keep the wooden part, because they make great little pieces for DIYs. So I have like hot glue on it I'm picking off there, but I just use a baby wipe, some of the Folk Art antique wax, and we're staining those. Once those are fully dry, I go ahead and give it a coat of gray paint. It doesn't really matter what gray paint you choose. Whatever gray paint you think looks like metal would work. The real magic happens is when I use this one. It's from Folk Art. It's a metallic sterling silver. A lot of people ask me about this one because I use it for my galvanizing. That is the magic right there. You really need to stir this up. I actually recommend storing it upside down. It works better that way. Otherwise, all of the little, whatever the chemical is or substance is or ingredient is, whatever it is that makes it look metallic, kind of floats to the bottom. So I give it a good dry, because we're using nutmeg now from Apple Barrel Paint. That is my absolute #1 favorite color for faux rust. It's a pretty much, you don't need to do anything to it color, and it works great for rust or just making things look antiqued. I know some people might want to go full out there and add some cinnamon to have it that look. I didn't want that, because this is actually going to go to my daughter-in-law, and she was kind of telling me what she wanted. She's going to be using it in her kitchen. She loves the way this came out. I'm using the Gorilla Super Glue and some hot glue to glue those little faux legs down, and that gives it a permanent hold. And while it's drying, I'm gently taking a baby wipe and I'm going to stain around the paper. Now the reason I do this afterwards is because the tissue paper is transparent, and it'll, at least for me, I didn't want the print to be that dark. You will see the brown through it, so you got to kind of do this at the end. And I also like to go around on the tissue paper a little bit because it helps blend the paper into the wood and make it look even more like a print. Now I'm just taking the Dollar Tree sponge and some of that antique wax, and I'm gently brushing it on the little legs so that they match. And I'm also using the sponge, the little beveled edge there, to do the edges of this wooden piece as well. And this sign is really huge too. This is another one of those big, huge trays. I think my daughter-in-law is planning on using it to either put coffee mugs on in her kitchen or possibly fruit, like bananas or something. She just loves it. She just said, she goes, "Ooh, I want that one. I'm taking that one." So, you know, her maiden name is actually French, so maybe that has something to do with it, but she instantly loved this. And as you saw, glue those 4 little pieces I made down in the corner. That gives it that final French look. And then I'm taking those 2 little dowels there, and I'm going to glue some handles on it so you can pick this tray up by some handles. So now I'm just taking some of that black marker from the Dollar Tree, using it to hide the hot glue, and that's it. We're all done. This one, I started off with some packing foam that I got in something I ordered from Amazon. I keep everything. So it is that foam that has a lot of little white balls, but if you go really slow and cut, it wasn't that bad. So I went ahead and cut out a huge heart shape. It's pretty big. I think it's like 18 inches high at the highest point here. And then I cut out some foam board from the Dollar Tree to put on the top so that my surface was nice and smooth. Now, because we are dealing with foam, I chose to use cold glue and just let it set up because I didn't want, if you've worked with foam before, if you use hot glue, you'll burn a hole down in there, so it doesn't really adhere really well. So most of this project was done with cold glue or Mod Podge, and that worked perfect. It was fine. Next, we're going to be using this garden fence from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to be cutting it with the tin snippers. This was the best method I found to cut these. So you're going to cut out that shape right there to start with, and then I just took little bits and pieces here and there and decided to add to it. So you can do whatever you want to fill in the little blank spaces. I just didn't want quite as many blank spaces. I mean, this would even be pretty just with a simple, less is more approach, where you just put one of these in the middle, that's it, and then do some kind of pretty border, maybe with beads or something, like half beads. That would also look really pretty. But I wanted the whole thing to have a 3D look, and this is what I came up with right here when we were all done. So to hold those on, again, because we're working with foam, I went with Mod Podge because Mod Podge is a little stronger than regular school glue. It has more of a plastic type chemical. They actually add plastic into it, and I've shown on my previous videos how you can just peel that off and it's like a really thin sandwich bag basically, but it is a much more durable hold. At least that was what I had available. You can always use a stronger glue, but that's what I had available. So I went ahead and stayed with the Mod Podge, and that also allowed me to adjust the pieces where I wanted them at the perfect angle, and then I just put a heavy box on top of it and let it dry. Once it was dry, I went ahead and gave it a coat of the chalk paint in the color Plaster. It's Waverly. And I did a lot of debating whether or not I wanted to dry brush this because when we work with the Dollar Tree tiles, at least with me, I often dry brush over because the designs that are kind of puffed up are subtle. So to bring them out some more, I dry brush, but these are so chunky that you don't really need to dry brush them because there's already so many natural shadows happening. So after sitting and staring at it for about an hour, yes, about an hour, I decided I'm just going to leave it all creamy one color. I think that looks best. This is actually going to hang in my hallway. And to solve the side problem where we don't want people knowing it's made out of foam, I just took my old trick and I put some of the joint compound on the side. Once it dries, I will sand that down. And then to hang it, again, wet glue. I used wood glue this time and put some duct tape over it, and then put a heavy, I have a heavy Waverly container on there to keep the string really tight because you don't want to see it come up from behind when you hang it. Although this isn't heavy, so it shouldn't stretch too much. And there's 2 staples in there that I did with a staple gun just for extra strength. Now you see those sides right there. See on the side of where you cut the garden fence, there's always like little open areas when you split them in the areas where they're connected. That's unavoidable. I don't like that. You can leave it if you want to, but this is going to hang in my hallway, like I said, and you are going to see that. So what I'm going to do is go to the Dollar Tree and get some of the caulking that they sell in the red tube and just squirt it in there and fill it in so it's all cohesive. But this came up so beautiful. Some chicken wire that I found at the Dollar Tree. I don't know if it's supposed to be real chicken wire or like cheap chicken wire, but I'm using it today to make a super cute DIY. So I'm just going to kind of pick a size that I want and bend it in half, and then use my wire cutters to cut it straight across. And then I'm going to go ahead and take something big. So this is like a plastic vase that I found at the Dollar Tree, but you could use a box, you could use a big, huge like plastic container, anything that kind of helps you keep the chicken wire open, because you're going to need to kind of twirl it in like I am on either end. And I'm also going to be taking the bottom corners and kind of rolling them so that they look round, almost like in a purse shape. I'm actually using the wire that came with this chicken wire. It's what wrapped it up. It's a pretty generous piece, and I just cut it in different sections, and I put I twisted one down at the bottom, in the middle, and at the top. You can also use the actual chicken wire, like the little ends, to twist it around if you want to as well. I think that would hold it. I just did it to be extra careful so that it wouldn't fall apart. So once I had it in a pretty good shape, I took the plastic container out and started bending it in the opposite direction so that it wouldn't curl in on itself. And I just continually shape this, move this, bend this. I did it without gloves. It's not too bad because it's not real chicken wire, but you might want to use gloves if you want to be a little bit rougher with it. And now I'm taking some of the Dollar Tree nautical rope, and I just looped it through and then glued it together like this. And then I took some of the same nautical rope, but I took it apart because it comes apart in a whole bunch of different strands. But I just kind of, right there, I just kind of took, see how there's multiple strands? I just kind of took that thickness. It almost looks like there's 3 strands that you can pull apart, but actually there's tons of strands in there depending on how tiny you want to go. So I just kind of took the chunk that looked like one of the 3, and I spun it around the top of that nautical rope to cover it, and then I'm going to glue it. And I did that on both sides to make little handles. Now I'm going to use some of the Spanish moss, like a huge amount of it. And I'm going to shove it in there. That absolutely helps hold it open at that point. And then any little rough edges like this at the top, right there, I'm going to clip them down as far down as I can to make them nice and smooth. And I'll end up bending those little top pieces over as well, just so it's not so pokey, so you don't get poked. That's just to finish it off a little bit. And then you just tuck in your favorite florals. That's it. I found this beautiful apple pie sign from Hobby Lobby. It was reduced down to $1.99, and it's a great deal because this sign is huge. It stands about 20 inches tall and about 10 inches wide, so it's beautiful. There were some staples on the back that needed to be removed, as well as some paper, so I removed the staples, sanded the paper off, and then I'm just going to give it a coat of my homemade white chalk paint. Now, I also like the front of this sign, so I thought I don't really want to totally make it where I can't use both sides, so this sign is going to be reversible, and the one I'm making can be kept up all year round in the kitchen, or the other side can be all year round in the kitchen. So I start off with this Dollar Tree liner here, and I was actually inspired by this craft here off of Pinterest. She makes these little rustic carrots out of the Dollar Tree liner, and I just thought it was absolutely adorable. So I start off by tracing a carrot shape, and then I'm using the Dollar Tree napkins, but I'm actually using the white part from the napkins. So I'm going to save the front ones in case I want to do some more decoupage with those during another, spring or Easter DIY. But I thought I should go ahead and use the white layer underneath the colored print part of the napkin. Waste not, want not. You just use it because I try to use everything I have, and I'm also trying to give you guys ideas on how you can use everything you have in your craft supply as well. Most people don't use the bottom part of the napkin when they peel it apart for using it to Mod Podge, and it's a great filler. So I just glue the carrot together, stuff it with a napkin, and then I'm using some greenery at the top. Now I created this little sign here. It's actually from an antique carrot seed package. So I think it says something about carrot seeds in French, and I thought it would be fun to kind of try and guess what the words say. I didn't want to Google Translate them ahead of time. So for those of you that don't speak French, you can have a guess with me. I'm guessing they say something about large, extra large carrots in a color. I want to say red. The rouge is like red, but it might mean orange in French. My French isn't that good, you guys, but if somebody knows, leave a comment down below because I thought that would be fun. And I decided that I wanted some Spanish moss at the top, just like the inspirational piece. I do think that looks really cute, and it covers the lip. At first I was just going to leave that little lip at the top, but I definitely think the Spanish moss looks better. So I just crunch it up and I glue it on the front and a little bit on the back, and then I'm going to go ahead and stick my greenery in again. So I wanted to go ahead and use something to wrap around the carrot. Now in the inspirational photo, she uses raffia, and I felt like maybe that might direct it more towards a specific season like fall or Easter. I wanted this to be up at my kitchen all year round, so I went with twine because that's a little bit more neutral, and I wrapped a little bit up at the top, just kind of crisscrossed it, no specific way. I just crisscrossed it a little bit, and then I thought it would be cute to wrap it at the bottom of the carrot as well. And then, as you can see, I glue all three of those down inside the sign. So I wait to put the words at the top because I wanted to make sure that my greenery wasn't going to cover the words, and I do end up putting some more Spanish moss at the bottom just so the carrots kind of look like they're sitting in a field. This is definitely like a rustic craft or primitive craft a little bit because it's the neutral colors, but I think it came up so cute. And I'm taking the antique wax now, and any antique wax will work for this, and I'm just distressing the edge of the border, and I wanted to distress the carrots a little bit, and I also kind of wanted to make them look maybe a little bit warmer like natural carrot. I didn't want them to be that bright orange, but I didn't want them, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but they're very bright white in real life, and so I just wanted to tone them down a little bit and do the edges. Normally I would have done this before, but as I was crafting and I glued them down, I realized with the white background and everything, they just didn't pop enough for me anyway. In real life, I just felt like it was just too much white. So then I do the same thing around the words. I'm just antiquing it a little bit and distressing it just to give it a little bit of character and just, charm. And that's pretty much it. Then you're going to see me go on to make some flower little piece there for the top to cover the hanging hook, because if you remember in the beginning, I said I do want this to be reversible, so I didn't want to take the hook at the top right there off, or I won't be able to turn the sign around. So I just take a little bit of Dollar Tree florals, wrap it up in twine, and glue it on to hide it. I can always pop that off easily, and we're all done. This is a very, very tall whiskey bottle that one of my neighbors offered me, and I thought, yes, I'll take that. It's really heavy and thick, it's good quality, and it's huge. So I thought I could do something pretty with it, and bottles are always fun to work with. So I'm giving it a coat of my homemade white chalk paint. If you'd like the recipe, the video for that is down below in my description box. I give you several different options on what you can use for that. And after the paint is dry, I do have to do 2 coats, by the way. And after the paint is dry, I go ahead and I start taking my antique wax. Now you can use any antique wax for this. I'm using the one by Faux Art, but I'm just gently dry brushing it on. I'm taking my time just to give it a little bit of texture and dimension, and distress. That's the look I like. And then I went ahead and I printed this free printable up. This is from thegraphicsfairy.com. I will have the link down below in my description box. I found these gorgeous butterflies, and the butterflies in a row of 3 like that is just very in and hot right now. It was last summer too, so I thought it would be fun to add this to the bottle. So I'm just doing the old trick of taking the paintbrush, dipping it in water, and going around my little tissue paper and tearing the edges there. So for those of you that are wondering how I print on tissue paper, it is just gift tissue paper. I tape it on cardstock with regular masking tape and then just run it through my printer, and that's it. Well, right side up so that the print goes up on the tissue paper and not on the cardstock. And then I'm using a Dollar Tree glue stick. It worked brilliantly. I actually wasn't sure if that was going to work on a bottle. I don't think I've tried it on a bottle yet, and it worked great. No wrinkles, perfect adhesion. I went outside, gave this a little light mist spray of the clear lacquer just so the image didn't lift. Really light though, I just misted the front. And then I got this stamp from Amazon, and the jury is still out here. It's supposed to be that fake crackle effect, and I've been seeing, the IOD stamps, just different stamps of the crackle effect, and this got a 5-star review on Amazon. Everybody loved it. And I tried ink first, it didn't work, that's why it was stained a little bit at the top. So I'm just slapping some of the elephant gray from Apple Barrel paint on it to do it that way. And it definitely gives it texture, it definitely gives it dimension, it gives it a whole neat look. It comes up very beautiful. But when everything was said and done, I really, really want to hear from you in the comments to see what you think. But for those of you that have worked with crackle medium that's what you end up with right there. Crackle medium is where, or even just glue, you paint a dark color first, and then you put your glue on, let it dry till it's kind of tacky, and then you paint your white paint over it, and it dries with cracks all over. To me, that still looks more legit than the stamps. No matter how good the stamps are, even when they use ink, you just, at least in person, maybe on camera, it looks like it's 3D, but in person, it does not have that dimension. This is actually my husband's favorite DIY today in this video. He wants to keep the bottle because I was putting raffia ribbon on it, wrapping it with that jute twine at the top, putting a rose on the top to give it as a gift, but he's keeping it. So I don't know if the rose, he likes the rose, so it might stay. Here comes the same sign, number 2 DIY idea, and you can certainly do this with Dollar Tree signs, but I wanted to show you, that was $8.99. Sorry that's blurry, you guys. I forgot I put it on a set focus. It wasn't on automatic focus, so it didn't want to focus when I moved in close, and I totally forgot about that, but you can still tell it said $8.99. So I do the same thing. I remove all my stickers, give it a coat of white chalk paint, and this time I found this super cute printable for my French country lovers out there from the Graphics Fairy, and I'm taking my time. You can see here cutting it out really slowly. Now whenever I cut things out like this that I know they're going to have these little thin, like last time I did a bunny, it was the whiskers. This time it's the little antennas on the butterfly. I choose to use computer paper because it just makes it less likely to tear when I'm cutting. So I just use a little bit of regular computer paper, print it up, cut it out right to the edge so there is no paper hanging over the edge of it, and do my distressing around the edge, and that's it. We have this super cute sign. If you enjoyed today's video and had as much fun as I did, give it a thumbs up, comment, share the video. That really helps me here on YouTube. And of course, here's another one I think you'll enjoy watching next.